Strange things are afoot at the Circle K.
That kid is back on the escalator again.
Ain't gonna hurt.
Is my boomstick!
Game over, man. Game over.
Welcome to The Bargain Bin. He is your host, Ben Mason.
And he is your co-host, Sandra Luketic. And today we're talking 1995's Glory Days. We assume that if you're listening to the episode, you already watched the movie.
All right, Ben, before we actually talk about the movie, I want to ask you a question.
Okay.
All week, you have been on my case to try and pick details out, and if I've liked the movie, if I've watched it already, and almost everything you've said has tilted towards you assuming I wasn't going to like this movie.
It's true. I was poking at you because I wanted to have something to fire back with if you didn't like a certain part.
So, my question before we talk about the actual movie is why did you, who loves the movie, think that I would not like the movie?
You normally hate the stuff I love.
I mean, that's a pretty crass way to look at it. I mean,
we have differing opinions on a lot of things.
This is our second movie, and I liked Stakeland.
Good point.
But your assumption was that I wasn't going to like it. Now I'm curious, right, without getting into our actual feedback of the movie, what elements of the movie you thought were going to not appeal to someone like myself?
Well, it's a snapshot of the lives of college students. There's really there's no action whatsoever. It's more so just following people through a few weeks of their life.
But isn't that most of the like teen coming of age type movies of any era?
Yeah, but I didn't think you liked any of those.
Of course I do, man. Like
10 Things I Hate About You, maybe.
I don't know. I haven't seen that one.
Oh, I thought you had that.
No.
Oh wait, that was me.
I don't know if it counts as one of that genre, but I love like Breakfast Club, for example. It's the first one that comes to my head.
That definitely fits.
Yeah, so obviously it's not a genre that I don't like.
There's also maybe some of the cast.
Actually, I'm impressed by the cast. I was going to ask you, like, how many favors did the people making this movie cash in? Because if you even just look at the short cameos, the names that are in this movie is kind of ridiculous, actually.
Well, honestly, this movie was made before most of them were famous.
I assume that would be the case, but like, even still, it's rare that a movie is made with so many people before they're famous that all went and became famous, right? Like you're going to have like, a couple standouts in the class that are going to make something of themselves, but the sheer number of people in this movie, like I think McConaughey was probably already well known. Or at least decently well known?
Not really, no.
No?
He became really well known because of Dazed and Confused.
And what year was that?
Oh, God. I don't remember.
Doesn't have to be the exact year, but was it before or after? It's kind of the main thing I was leaning towards.
Oh, Glory Days was before.
Oh, okay. Fair, but I mean, even if that's not the case, that just adds one more person to become famous after this movie and still be in this movie. Like, that's a very large number of people to have successful careers.
I was wrong. Dazed and Confused came out in 93.
Okay, but not much more before. Like, there's only a couple of years, so there would have been fans of that movie that knew him, but he hadn't gotten his broad mass appeal yet. Though, again, he probably was, at the time, the most famous one in it. And it makes sense. He just had a short cameo. But, like, you still look at it, like, Ben Affleck, Sam Rockwell, French Stewart, cameos from Brendan Fraser, Leah Remini, Matt Damon in, like, the shortest cameo. Like, I really expected it. And the way that his cameo comes up, I thought he was going to be a character moving forward. Because they were saying how he used to live in the house. And I thought, okay, maybe this is going to come back. Nope. Just a super short cameo. But, like, man, the number... Even the guy... You're going to have to help me with the name. The guy who was handing out like the robes and graduation hats.
Oh God.
Like
Uh,
he's one of those guys that you recognize from a lot of things.
Sean Whalen.
Yeah, like even I recognized him. I couldn't tell you exactly, where he was from or kind of what more prominent roles he's done, but like you see him and you immediately identify him as a guy you've seen doing bit parts in movies.
Also, one of my favorite scenes in the movie.
It's not a bad scene, but you get what I'm saying. Like even just short cameos, and so many of these people become well-known faces and actors.
Massive. Yeah.
And in different avenues, right? Because like French Stewart's primary fame came from like sitcoms, right? Like Third Rock from the Sun, later on in some seasons of Mom. But
Yeah,
then you,
Third Rock came out a year after this movie.
yeah, and then you look at like Ben Affleck, obviously, who very big name, very well known. McConaughey, you can't say enough. Leah Remini's another one who went more to sitcoms, right? Like King of Queens, Saved by the Bell,
Yep.
things like that. So
Scientology.
yeah, well, she left that.
And out.
But you get what I'm saying. Like, there's a cast, very, very diverse cast from different backgrounds and different, I guess, successes moving forward that all happen to somehow bottleneck into this movie, which I found really odd. Like,
Yeah, it is odd.
I wasn't expecting that. Like, you told me about the movie, and I'm expecting kind of like lesser known, maybe Ben Affleck because he's, the star and this is his like leg up to get into the industry. But just the sheer number of people, I don't know how they got so many people in this movie.
Even like John Rhys Davies, who is a very well respected actor. I'm sure that's where most of the money went. The character of Luther. But yeah, like Alyssa Milano as well as Spalding Gray. I don't know how they got Spalding Gray. I don't know what that connection was because I don't think this is something he would normally audition for.
Who's Spalding Gray?
Oh, he plays Ben Affleck's father. He was a comedian and writer. Sadly suffered from severe depression.
I honestly didn't recognize him.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was one of the people in the movie who I saw it and I was like, I don't know who this is.
Now, he was an interesting character. But I'm curious, before we go more into the actual characters,
yeah.
Did you like this movie?
No. Oh, hell no. You were 100% right. I did not like this movie.
Yeah, I figured.
I think that this movie is going to be a prime example of a movie that you grew up with.
Yep.
I think people who watched it in its time and enjoyed it before are going to like it, but I don't think people that are newly introduced to it are going to like it. There's definitely some positives that I want to hit on. Because it's not just like all negatives. It's not like, oh, I hated 100% of this movie. But as a whole, I would find it a hard recommendation.
Yeah. Well, also you have to keep in mind that it's not a movie for people our age.
No, I get.
Yeah, it's more for people who are taking that step through their college career and then dealing with now what.
I get that, but I mean, like, even if I use an example that I brought up earlier, like Breakfast Club, I saw that movie long before any of those themes or morals of the story would apply to me, and I still enjoyed it. You can appeal. Go ahead.
I think it's because those character types they're timeless. These characters are so very much 1995.
And that's one of the things I wanted to hit on when we got to it. I don't know if this is a good time.
Sure, go for it.
Because that's one of the things that really, really, really stood out to me is this movie captured an era and a culture that was, in my opinion, fairly short-lived, but even shorter-lived in cinematic history. Seeing the, like, punk influence, the skater life, pseudo grunge. Yep. You don't see that too much in coming of age movies. Like there's definitely a million of them in the 80s. You hit it really hard again in the late 90s, 2000s, like the American Pies and stuff like that. But this really, really does hit a demographic that I don't often see in movies. And that really stood out to me. Not in a good or a bad way, mind you. But I'm watching the movie and I'm like, this is just so out of the ordinary for me.
Yeah, it's very dated. And I agree with what you say. It's not a time period that's really reflected in film often.
Do you think there's a reason that a lot of films didn't hit this particular era?
You know what? I'm sure they did, but that era came and went so quickly that I don't think, I don't know. I feel like a lot of people, if they were making a movie that really centered on this culture, by the time they were done making it, the culture was pretty much dead. So they just shelved the movie because no one would go see it.
Yeah, that part I find crazy. I would have thought at some point, in the like small little bit of movies that I actually watch, I would have hit some that hit this kind of subculture a little bit more. And I haven't. And then when I was watching this one, that really, really stood out to me. Not in a bad way. Like when I was in elementary school, like late elementary school, I was a skateboarder and stuff like that. I listen to punk music. I love the soundtrack in this movie. It hit me with a lot of enjoyment and nostalgia at the same time. But it just really, really stands out. And I'd say that alone might be a reason for somebody to watch this movie. Not that I would necessarily recommend it, but especially for somebody who kind of identified themselves with this generation or this era or this subculture. Yeah. Just to check it out, almost not even like as an enjoyable movie, but more of like a snapshot of a forgotten time.
Yeah, I agree. I said this earlier in the episode that it's really just a snapshot of people's lives. But yeah, it's this one exact year because it came out in '95. That means it was filmed most likely in mid to late '94. So yeah, that would make sense with the death of grunge.
Yeah, but that doesn't necessarily make it a good movie, mind you. That just makes it an interesting historical piece.
Okay, well, let's go into more reasons as to why you don't like it.
Before I do, I do want to ask you another question because I'm clearly on the verge of just sidetracking you as much as possible, apparently.
Okay.
I tried to look this up on Rotten Tomatoes.
All right.
Just to see if more people were in my camp or yours, because I knew you liked it, and you seem to.
I'm sure people hated it.
Well, here's the thing. I couldn't find it under that name, but I found it listed under Last Call, and it had a 43% audience score.
Last Call?
Yeah, and like, I thought maybe I looked at it wrong, but like, when you look at on the Rotten Tomatoes page, like Last Call photos, it's clearly photos of the cast at the house party scene, right? When Affleck's wearing the pin and Alyssa Milano tries to make Mikey jealous, right?
Yeah.
I thought maybe you knew of some maybe issues or turmoils or regional reasons why it might be listed as a different name.
No, this is the first I've ever heard about it.
All right, so there's something
that doesn't make it. Okay, never mind. I'm just trying to figure out why they would have chosen that name.
Well, I mean, two things. Either one, our viewers can look it up and educate us. Or two, it could just be that when they were posting it on like Rotten Tomatoes, they messed up. I can't see that being the case, but it's possible.
I would like... Oh, wait. Yeah, it was called Last Call when it was... released in November. No, they don't say anything about why the name changed, but I would really like to know.
Well, there you got some homework. Or, like I said, maybe some of our audience members who are a little bit more versed in it can let us know. Now, you wanted to get into why I didn't like this movie?
Yeah.
You sure you want to do that?
I know that you like to pick things apart. I'm not going to take it to heart. I still love it.
Well, for one, I don't think much of anything happens in this movie.
No, it doesn't.
It is a collection of scenes that are put together that might not necessarily need to go together. And if I sum up the plot, like they graduated, they didn't want to leave, so they decided to stay until they didn't decide to stay anymore.
Yeah, the whole movie's about the fear of moving forward.
Yeah, but like there's so many better ways to do it. Like so little happens in this movie.
Yeah, it's all about emotion. There's not a lot of action. Um, I think what really kind of connected everything together for me and merely made me like it was the character of Slosh and how he just didn't care. He's like, what happens, happens. It's going to happen. Make a choice or just let it hit you.
I mean, he's definitely probably the best. Definitely probably. There's a good start to a sentence. He's the character that is the most unassuming when you're watching the movie. Because it's like the scene that he has with Jack, right? Ben Affleck's character on the beach, where he's like, you guys just think I'm some drunk, right? Like, but all the while, choosing to be that way doesn't mean that he's a lazy, useless drunk. He's just the one that's opened his eyes to this is what he wants. He's chosen to be aimless and chosen to lack direction.
Yeah, he's an overlooked character, I find, in the movie. He's almost like the heart and soul of the movie, and he doesn't have enough screen time.
But he's also the one that doesn't change. Right?
No, he kind of does.
Well, he changes in that he moves to another house and kind of becomes the leader of a different group. But
exactly.
He is the one who still... Because when we start this movie, the other characters are graduating. So they have this trigger point to initiate change. But we know that he has already dropped out of school. There's no change pending for him other than the fact that everybody's going to be leaving. So in this movie that you really like about, forcing to change and forcing to move forward and evolve, the most kind of deep character is the one that doesn't. He moves down the street and continues life presumably in the same way as he was living it when the opening scene started.
Just getting fired over and over again.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? Like, that's not a change for him. That's what he was doing. He's the only character who is doing the same thing at the end of the movie as at the beginning of the movie. But he's the one who's the most aware of the fact that there are decisions to be made. He's just choosing, right? Like, Ben Affleck's character wants to stay. You can tell that he almost gets scared into it.
Yep.
Right? So he's almost reacting like, these are the punches that are being thrown at me. It's easier to kind of like, just crawl into my shell and hide and continue what I was doing. Whereas Slosh is making a conscious effort not to hide, not to roll with the punches, but he's consciously made the decision, this is what I want. And he's doing it. And he really contrasts the other characters quite a bit in that regard.
Yeah. I think the main contrasting characters would be Ben Affleck's character Jack and Sam Rockwell's Rob, because they're both afraid of changing. 100% afraid of changing.
Yeah, and you know what? I didn't like the character of Rob.
He's kind of an idiot.
He is, but yeah, he's just an idiot. Like, he's very difficult to tolerate.
Yeah.
I don't even know where to go with him. Like, with Jack, there's at least some analysis I can put into it, some comparison. Like, there's a very heavy part of it where I kind of found his whole hanging up on Dina as like a parallel to his like refusal to change himself. It wasn't really about the relationship. There was something I could analyze deeper beyond the surface. With Rob, he just seemed like a weenie.
Yeah. I mean, with Jack, school's ending. You got to move on. You can't change that. Hey, Dina broke up with you. Got to move on. You can't change that. And Rob's big problem is that his girlfriend's mother is actually paying for their housing and just happens to live a 5-minute drive away.
And he didn't even meet her yet. The whole thing was based on speculation. Once he finally meets her at the graduation and they spend some time together, he likes her.
Yeah.
So
he's just an idiot.
Yeah, Rob doesn't have a problem. He has a girlfriend. He is worried about her mom, who seems all right. They're gonna like give him housing, which whatever, handouts,
Yeah,
whatever.
I'd be more worried about Joni.
Yeah, but like Rob,
It's an idiot and a jerk dating each other.
yeah, yeah. Their whole subplot did not appeal to me at all. At all.
No.
In regards to subplots though, can we talk about Dina?
Sure.
Is she just a metaphor for Jack's past?
I think so.
Because there really isn't any reason for him to want to be with her.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like it is the representation of, like, their relationship ending is essentially his school year ending, his move to his brother's being initiated. Like,
Yep.
even the conversation they have on the beach, which has my favorite line in the movie in it, because he's all flustered and he says, "Isn't there a third option between burning out and fading away?"
Yeah.
None of it is even like he's convincing her that he loves her or wants to be with her. It's more just that he's afraid of the change of letting her go.
Yeah. That makes sense. That makes perfect sense. I think that's why they also never really show the face of the new boyfriend.
I mean, do they need to?
Well, no, it just shows that the whole thing about her leaving him is not about this other guy. It's because of him.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can easily see her being a metaphor for him losing his past and not knowing his future.
Yeah, that's the problem. Like, with their relationship, Jack and Dina, I can see that parallel to him not wanting to move on. But the problem with it, much like this movie, is I don't have much more to say about it. Like, it's got a lot of good ideas, but it just doesn't explore them well enough.
Honestly, I think there's too many characters.
That's definitely part of it. Like, it is tough in an hour and 40 minutes to have subplots for, like, Jack, Rob, Slosh. They didn't really, like, Slosh is kind of just interwoven into other people's plots. But then you also have Mikey. I was going to say Dennis last, but yes, Mikey and Dennis. Did you want to talk about Dennis's plot?
Yeah. It's probably the most, I'd say, the deepest subplot of all of them.
Okay.
Slightly disturbing how he was being played by Luther, who had absolutely zero interest in keeping him as an understudy because of his quality of work, but just sexual attraction.
That was such a terrible scene.
Yep.
Like when Luther was like, it's your painting or whatever.
Yeah.
And Dennis is like, I'm a photographer. It's like, okay, are we supposed to believe that Luther, this university professor, even if it's an art, can't remember the one person that he's scamming what background he's in? Like, come on.
Well, we don't know that this is the only person he's doing that to.
Well, how many jobs can there possibly be? Like, I could get being kind of sleazy and doing different things, but an actual university job, it's not like there could be that many of them.
Yeah, but there's nothing to say that he would have made it that far.
Oh, I see
it
what
could
you're
have just
saying.
been an empty promise.
Oh, okay. All right. Get what he wants, and then, the job's not there.
Yeah, because I'm wondering how many times he pulled the same trick on the people that were building the Corpus Christi totem pole.
I mean, but those were students still, weren't they? Like, they were...
Yeah, he was still a student.
Yeah, but the idea was that he was offering him a job beyond his student tenure, even if it wasn't there. Was he was offering these kids the chance to build a totem?
Maybe. I don't know. He's just a creepy character, and I could easily see him pulling the same thing on someone else.
Oh, absolutely. I just feel like it would have to be like kind of like one a year type thing, because
yeah, that's true.
If he's using the job as the carrot on the stick, there's only so many that he can kind of wave in front of people. But that's besides the point. That's irrelevant to the plot. The idea is just that he was trying to manipulate Dennis into staying because of his attraction to him and not because of his actual art. But it made me feel like, okay, even if he's been running this scam for a while, That's a stupid amateur move to not remember the field. And then that makes him look dumb.
But then it also, I think, would make Dennis feel like maybe the previous person was a painter.
Would he care? Like what the previous person was?
No.
No.
But I think that was the slip up. I think that was the intention of the slip up. I don't think he is dumb enough to forget the profession or the direction of the student he's trying to seduce.
Fair. But I mean, how does this make him the deepest character then? How does Dennis' subplot make him the deepest one?
Because he is the one who is actually willing to move forward and go to Michigan.
Well, in a way, before Jack convinces them, they were all prepared to go forward.
Yeah,
he had accepted a job in Michigan. Rob was going to move, whether he was comfortable or not. Mickey and Slosh were apparently going to get an apartment together.
I love Mickey,
which they alluded to, but then Slosh just moves in with the other guys without even consulting, I guess, with Mickey. But I guess Mickey's going to end up with Chelsea.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter, but it was Jack that you could tell was clearly the alpha in the group, and he talked them into staying for the while.
Yeah, I felt that was really uncomfortable too.
Pretty manipulative.
Yeah, extremely. But like the look on everyone's face, like, well, yeah, I want to, but I actually have other things that I'm supposed to be doing. And he just kind of pushes them closer and closer until everyone's like, yeah, all right, why not? What's another year?
See, I can understand Slosh.
Oh, yeah.
I can understand Mickey. I can even understand Dennis because at the time of that conversation, he thinks he has a 1-year job lined up.
Mm-hmm.
But Rob is going to ditch moving with his girlfriend to another city to a house where his, like, I don't know, maybe future mother-in-law is going to pay for. He's going to ditch that for a year. That guy is such a weenie.
I know. I know.
All right, well, let me ask you, more broad strokes. Why do you like this movie so much?
Well, you touched on it already earlier in the conversation. I think it was I saw it at the right time. I grew up in a rather rural area, so a lot of pop culture from the West Coast took longer to hit Eastern Canada. So I was really getting into the music that they were playing as I saw the movie. Keep in mind, I saw this in 1998. So I already knew these people were big stars. So seeing them all together one movie, it was like awesome for me. I was such a movie junkie.
I mean, to be honest, that part was awesome for me right now too. Like, yeah. I was just waiting to see who else I would see in a scene, right? Like,
yeah,
that's at any point would be entertaining.
Now, I have another thing too, where I'm very forgiving with certain films because I really don't think this should be a movie. I think it should be a stage play.
Okay, but why do you forgive it for that then? Because it's not a stage play. It's a movie.
It's also competently made. I mean, you look at the writer, director's other movies. I think this is probably his most not in depth, but movie with substance. Because I mean, before this, I think you did Airheads.
Hey, I would sooner watch Airheads, man.
Well, that's a comedy, though.
Yeah, but at least it's a comedy where something happens in it. Like, I feel that this movie, with as many subplots as it has, isn't fleshed out enough.
How would you change it?
I don't know, but like, it just felt like everything moved so quickly, and like, look at the conversation where Jack tells everybody to stay. It took like no convincing. If you think of the grand scheme of things, that took no convincing. And then afterwards, they're just like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna go now." Right? Like, things just moved along way too quickly. There wasn't enough of a trigger for these things to happen.
Okay, so what would you remove to allow the time to do that?
You could easily drop one of the plots. Probably the Rob one. Just because it's the least interwoven with him. maybe Mickey, but I guess the whole thing with like building some tension between him and Jack, and Chelsea trying to make Mickey jealous with him is a little bit more interwoven. But the Rob plot could be dropped and then actually flesh out some of these motivations and reasons for what they are. Like, I feel like the movie had a really good idea on what story it wanted to tell, but then just didn't flesh it out enough.
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason why it didn't do well. I admit that. But, like, if you want to ask me why I like it, man, I fucking like Biodome. So this really shouldn't surprise you.
Yeah.
If I can like a movie that terrible, but I don't think this is terrible.
And I'm just trying, like, okay, maybe I'm playing devil's advocate a little bit more than I should, but I'm just trying to get to why you like it.
I just fully enjoy it. I understand confusion with moving on. I understand people not wanting to take responsibility. I understand people that are, like, freaking out about things that don't require that much attention. People that worry about things that might not even happen. Like, these are all emotions that I've felt before, or they're emotions of people who are very close to me. And having been through their scenario of growing together and then everybody having to go off in their separate directions or different directions, I mean, that hits home to me. Even things like Matt Damon as Pudwacker. Like, I've lived with people before who nobody wants to give the time of day to, because there's some weird history there. Like, have you ever had a bunch of roommates before? Have you lived with other people?
No.
That could be it.
But
because you can have a group of friends, and that can mean a lot. You feel and act differently or the same way around each other. But when you actually live with people, that bond is so much stronger. So I could easily see why he would try and dupe them back into staying for another year, because there's a sense of loss when a group of friends who have lived together leave.
But I'm not.
So maybe it's just a personal connection. Maybe it's not that it's a great movie.
I'm not disputing any of those. I understand the movie's sentiment. I get that it has a very good premise. But can you not admit that there's a lot of movies that do the same things but better?
No.
No.
Like what?
I don't know. You're the movie expert.
Yeah, I haven't seen one if there is.
I mean, I'm sure.
I do have one question about this movie, though.
Yeah. Of course. We'll get to that. But, like, of all the teenage coming-of-age movies, you don't think that they deal with roommates, loss, things like that in the same vein?
Not well.
Not well. Okay. All right. Well.
And it might, like I said, it was also probably the time I saw this. I would have been, like, 16. So going through crazy emotions at that point anyway. And the more I watched it, I kind of, like, grew up with the movie.
And I mean, I pretty much one of the first things I said is that this movie is definitely going to be about who grew up with it and who watched it after the fact.
Yeah.
So what question did you want to ask me?
Why was the guy slapping the fish?
I don't know. You tell me. There's a lot of stuff in this movie that just happens.
I've been trying to figure it out since I first saw this movie, and I still don't understand. Nobody can tell me.
Do you not think that it's possible that there's just a bunch of random scenes in it?
Could be.
Like, why is it a mime that's buying pizza from Slosh in the pizza store?
That's true.
Like,
the whole scene with his parents at the graduation dinner, or no, when they go to dinner, that I don't really think that needed to be there. It's more like, hey, we got Spalding Gray.
Yeah, and his parents are kind of dicks.
Yeah, and we don't need to know that, yeah, Jack's parents are assholes, as well as the fact that he's not a competent human being.
Well, they just ditched him. Like, that's your
He's a man of the world now.
Like, We see that right from the first scene with the dad. It's like, what are you gonna do now? He's like, I've been a graduate for 17 minutes. Oh, well, that's wasted time. And then, regardless of what the argument was at the table, he says, "Can I be excused? I need to go to the bathroom." And then they just get in the car and start to leave. Like, you're gonna ditch your son in a restaurant bathroom? Like, why? And I mean, I will say that scene brought on probably my second favorite line in the movie, where Ben Affleck says, like, "You had your chance to ruin your lives. Now let me ruin mine." Right? Yeah. But the rest of that scene doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, no, it was weird.
But it feels like they needed that scene to pad it out.
Maybe. Because I really don't... Yeah, that's a good point. I really don't see the importance of that scene. We don't need it. But we also didn't need Matthew McConaughey's character. No. And I loved it.
We didn't need Brendan Fraser and Leah Remini. So he got angry at some people on the bus.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Fraser is only there because he was in Airheads. But Leah Remini, I have no idea.
I really did like the you're lucky I don't know karate. That was probably the one time I actually laughed watching the movie. Which actually is this supposed to be a comedy? Because that was the only time I laughed watching the movie.
I don't think so. I don't think it's supposed to be a comedy at all. I'm sure they called it a comedy to try and market, but I'd say it's just a straight up drama.
Yeah, they definitely could have put more comedy in there. Like the whole scene with the graduation or the robes could have been funnier.
Yeah. To maybe a more talented writer-director.
I don't know, man. I'm having trouble with this one. I'm trying. I'm trying to be respectful and I'm trying to find some redeeming qualities of it, but it's tough.
So what would you say is your absolute favorite point?
My absolute favorite
part, sorry.
I don't have one.
Is it just the karate line?
I think it's those few lines, right? Like I highlighted 3 lines that I really liked. Yeah. But I can't even really say I enjoyed the scenes surrounding them. Like you're lucky I don't know karate line was great and made me laugh, but what was the point of that scene? The bus driver was so over the top. Not that I'm necessarily saying it's okay to call a woman a chick, but the reaction to it was quite unbalanced, I guess.
Yeah, that's the word I was thinking of.
And I think it's the same thing with the other scenes. Like, I like the scene, or I like the line of, "You had your chance to screw up your lives, let me screw up mine," but we just talked about how that entire scene in the restaurant makes no sense.
Yeah.
And then with the line of there's got to be a third option between burning out and fading away takes place in a scene where he's talking to Dina and he just gives up? Like, he's brooding over her the entire movie, and then he has one conversation with her on the beach where she says, "I don't care," and then now he's like, "Okay, yeah, I'm good to move on." Like, what?
You're raising some very good points.
Yeah, that's the only kind I have.
Oh, shut up.
I mean,
I don't know.
You told me in all of the times where you were hinting that I wasn't going to like this movie, how much you were going to be prepared to counteract that. And I'm not hearing it, man. I'm not hearing it.
Because you're not wrong. You're not wrong about a lot of what you say. But maybe I just blindly like this film.
And let me ask you this, because I feel like we're getting to the end of what we can talk about this movie.
Mm-hmm.
You like the movie. There's no debating that.
Okay? Yes.
And I can't convince you not to like the movie, right? You like the movie, that's fine. Can you recommend the movie?
I did recommend the movie. But now I'm going to have to put like a tag at the end of it, just letting people know there's a good chance you're going to hate it.
Well, if you think that people are going to hate it, why would you recommend it?
because I like recommending things, random things that people have never heard of. Because I didn't think you would actually like Stakeland.
But I did like Stakeland. It was a bad movie that I really, really liked. And
exactly,
the further we get away from the viewing of it, and the more that I think about it and sit with it, the more I like that movie.
And that's me and Glory Days, man. It's not a good movie, but I love it. I love it to death.
But that's the thing. I can like movies and not recommend them because I know that it's very specifically me that likes them. And I can also dislike movies that I can still recommend because I know that while it wasn't for me, there's an audience out there for it. And I feel like you love this movie and you say you'd recommend it, and you did, but even just like the whole week of hinting that I wasn't going to like it almost made it feel like you weren't confident in the recommendation.
I don't know, because the last person I recommended this movie to watched it and went out and bought it.
And that's, again, there's an audience for something somewhere, right? I can't think that there's anything that's universally panned, right? Even something with like a 14% fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes means that 14% of people seem to like it, right?
That's true.
There is an audience for it. I can see your background, maybe people you associate with, but I honestly feel like as a whole, this can't be an easy recommendation for you.
I guess it did get a 5.5 on IMDb. No, I'll still recommend it.
All right.
Okay. If only to see the star power. And McConaughey. He's hilarious in that movie.
Okay, I will say that. Not that I necessarily enjoyed spending an hour and 40 minutes of my time watching that movie, but the one thing that I did enjoy was the entire movie anticipating what the next cameo, what the next surprise was going to be. But the movie itself, I don't think it's a secret. I couldn't recommend this one.
No, well, obviously not. Because I honestly, to tell you the truth, I thought you were going to like it until I rewatched it. And I was like, oh, this is not a Sandro movie.
Yeah, but you also thought I wasn't going to like Stakeland. So
that's true.
Here we are. We're 2 episodes in, and we're batting 500. So the question now, Ben, becomes, what do we watch next?
Next, we are watching 1990's Prayer of the Roller Boys.
I know this is a podcast, but please understand my stunned silence. What?
You don't know that movie?
No. I'd wager there's probably like 2 people in this world that know that movie. What? Prayer?
Okay, here.
So am I a roller boy now? Not quite.
Prayer of the Roller Boys. In a dystopian near-future America, a young man infiltrates a powerful drug-dealing, rollerblading youth gang that runs his town in order to end their reign for good. Starring Corey Haim.
Once in, never out.
Okay, then. Well, until then, I guess we can sign off. If anybody listening has seen that movie and wants to drop in some questions, hit up our Facebook page or our Twitter. Both are at BS Bargain Bin. Leave us some comments or questions. We might read them on the next episode. But until then, thanks for listening.
All the best, guys.